My entire Twitch and YouTube presence is owed to this game. A friend asked me to beta test a game he was making, and instead of trying to text or talk on the phone, it was easier to just live stream the game for him to see the bugs and such I encountered as they occurred. This eventually blossomed into my playing quite a few RPG Maker games, for better or for worse. Thanks to this friend introducing me to the community, that is RPG Maker game developers, I played many fun games and made some good friends. The last 5 years, this game has been a part of my life, and is a big reason for a lot of fun I've had over that time. It all started with a simple question. Hey, you want to try out my game, Final Fantasy XI Braver? As I've stated in the opening, I've been regularly playing Braver for over 5 years, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. It's been in the background of my life, but also a major part. This video, while a retrospective or a review, is also an unabashed love letter. That being said, if you don't know me that well, there won't be any fluff and I won't be ignorant of the game's flaws. I'll be looking at it as objectively as I can, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy myself. Let's do this thing. While this game is heavily based on the world of Anandiel that was first presented in Final Fantasy XI, knowledge of the parent game is not needed, and that's what's kind of brilliant about this game. All of the content stands on its own, which I think probably separates it from other fan game endeavors. Of course, the nods and references will enhance the experience, but otherwise, the game can just be played as it is. There are 4 party members, and the player starts the game off by choosing which job each will have from a list of 6: Warrior, Monk, Thief, Black Mage, White Mage, and Red Mage. I've tried them all, and each of them is viable for the early game all the way through until the end. My most recent playthrough, which you can watch in full at Hard Reset Archives, I started with Warrior, Black Mage, White Mage, and Thief, while keeping the first 3 all the way past the final boss. This to me is the biggest standout of Braver, the balancing. I used quite a few different job combinations, and all of them have worked. I was even challenged by my Twitch chat to use 4 White Mages, and I was able to get through quite a bit that way as well. The players gain experience points and job points per job, meaning that there's a lot of playability because every job can reach level 75 and there are 18 different jobs in total. While there is a way later on to lessen the grind required, playing each job by itself will allow the player to learn how the new abilities can synergize with the other classes in their party. For example, I used Warrior to tank all of the endgame content, and while they can maybe survive on their own, I specifically paired my Warrior with a White Mage. My White Mage was constantly casting Blink and Stone Skin, which increase evasion and add a shield respectively. This allowed my Warrior to tank while also still using damaging abilities, making for a very nice combo. Each job, other than Blue Mage, earns new abilities when they level up and then can spend their job points on passive abilities and weapon skills. The passive are mostly simple in their uses, but they really do come in handy. Stat increases are always welcome, resistance to status effects, especially resist silence on casting classes. SOS Protect saved me a few times on my Warrior, but my current favorite has to be Element Master on Black Mage that increase element-based attacks by a percentage. I played Black Mage in Final Fantasy XI, so I'm totally not biased towards the class at all. Weapon skills allow the player to spend TP that they've earned to do big damage. These weapon skills can also have other effects like MP Drain or added elemental attributes which might help the player beat down the enemy faster. The best part about weapon skills is after you unlock the second tier, the player can now start creating skill chains. For those not familiar with the mechanic from Final Fantasy XI, a skill chain is what happens when 2 weapon skills are comboed together. In Braver, the player opens the skill chain and then they have a few turns to close it with the proper corresponding weapon skill. When the skill chain is closed, an elemental AoE bombards the enemies and then they are marked with that skill chain for a few rounds. This mark signifies that they are susceptible to Magic Burst. Magic Burst basically means that the enemy takes 2 times damage to the element associated with the skill chain. This mechanic is one of my favorite parts of Braver. Coordinating with the party when leveling in 11 to create a skill chain and then magic bursting all while getting their timing correct was insanely satisfying, and being able to mimic that in a turn-based single-player game is something to behold. This is where Blue Mage becomes a serious powerhouse. If If you aren't familiar with blue magic mechanics, the class uses monster skills. The player has to go learn those skills from enemies all around Vana'diel, which is nice for a few reasons. You get to go back and explore, and also get some benefit out of grinding mobs. The blue mage is versatile and can be equipped to serve a few different functions. Some of the skills are physical-based and magic-based, which are dependent on their strength and dexterity stats and intelligence and mind stats respectively. They can inflict damage, heal and buff party members, inflict status effects, and remove buffs from enemies. They can really do it all. However, my favorite part is using the blue mage as a skill chain battery. Most blue magic skills are similar to weapon skills, whereas they can open and close skill chains. I personally didn't care about the damage my blue mage did. I just used that party member as the ultimate support class with the focus role of opening and closing as many skill chains as possible. This in turn made my black mage even more powerful by being able to magic burst for double damage. I really do enjoy those hefty combos. All of the other classes are similar to their counterparts throughout the Final Fantasy series and take a lot of inspiration specifically from Final Fantasy XI. The combat uses a conditional turn-based system, which is similar to Final Fantasy X. This allows the player to plan out their choices for their turn. There are also skills that allow the player to manipulate the turn order by stunning the enemy or even pushing them to the end of the line. There are also quite a few abilities that act as instants, which means it doesn't use up the character's turn, which will cause building up a lot of defensive or offensive combo possibilities. The combat is well balanced, well designed, and with 18 different jobs to learn, level, and mix together, the player can spend many hours in this version of Vana'diel. The references and mechanics similar to the game that inspired it are also a big part of Final Fantasy XI Braver. The player will encounter quite a few notorious monsters, enemies that are tough and have rare drop items that are exceptionally powerful. Some of the fights are very difficult early on, but the rewards are more than worth it. Quite a few of the rare items that can be found share names with items from Final Fantasy XI, and it still takes me upwards of 5 kills to get leaping boots to drop. There are side quests tied to these notorious monsters as well, which gives incentive to explore each zone thoroughly. The most nostalgic vibes I get out of Braver, though, come straight from how Bastok, one of the cities of the game, is mad. It is perfect in the way it is realized in its 2D iteration. As a Bastokian myself, I felt like I was walking the streets and markets and mines, just like it was the actual Final Fantasy XI. This is mainly because the food shops and weapons and armor dealers have the exact same names that they do in Final Fantasy XI, really showcasing the attention to detail. The city designs really shine in Braver and tell of the labor of love that this game is. Sandoria looks great and reminiscent of its counterpart in Final Fantasy XI, and even Windhurst is alright, even though it always has been a slog to navigate. Even some of the text boxes contain very meta things with chat commands such as /bow, a true /nod to 11. There is a small crafting system that is, thankfully, simpler than the FF11 crafting system. There is no need to face a certain direction on a specific day with the proper corresponding weather to maybe hope for a 0.1 skill increase. The player can make food, gear, items, and augments. I really found the augments and gear to be the most beneficial to my playthrough. I would make earrings, rings, and necklaces to fill out slots until I uncovered rare pieces and I was using augments all the way through the final boss. Once again, I was really kidding out my black mage by augmenting the elemental staves with an elemental augment to really boost the weak point damage. The story of the game is pretty standard fare, but it isn't boring or offensive. It relies on some familiar tropes, but it is written well enough that it isn't bothersome. The party starts as any other adventuring group that receives the call to arms to help investigate an odd occurrence, and they are up for the challenge. The real oddity is that orcs are in Zayrun mines, and if you're a veteran of Final Fantasy XI, you know that this means they are way too close to Bastok and way too far away from their homeland. The team continues this investigation and embarks on a world-saving journey. If this sounds like a JRPG to you, like it does to me, then I think that the story was executed in proper fashion. It's about exploring the world and overcoming challenges and sorting out the mystery that is the growing beastman threat in Vana'diel. The characters actually have character, which is a nice change of pace from some games that I've played recently. Yes, this means that some tropes were utilized, but it's better than a character being a manifesto or one note. I think the game really shines when it comes to endgame content. While the 4 different areas open up through the course of the game, they're great spots to farm items for super rare weapons and the best gear in the game. The enemy parties are much tougher than anything else in the game, and there are some really difficult boss fights that will put certain party setups to the test. However, any well-balanced party will be able to overcome all challenges, which I think is another positive testament to Braver. Grinding out these zones to gather up gear and drops is well worth the player's time and can unlock some of the most powerful weapon skills and skill chains in the game. I never like going into the story much because my main hope from making these videos is that the viewer will go give the game a try. I will say that the player will encounter many familiar faces from Vana'diel and come across many monsters and summons from the Final Fantasy franchise, as well as some cameos from other games that you may have played. If you enjoy any of the Final Fantasy games, I really recommend giving Final Fantasy XI Braver a shot. As for the folks that might be a part of my Discord or seen some of my other videos or watch me live stream on Twitch, maybe it really was just a horse after all. They are also great spots to farm items for super rare. We did it, Kai. Let's go outside.